Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre with TeddyBaldassarre.com, and in this video we're looking at a trio of GMTs from the Seiko collection. We have the SSK GMTs in 3 new colorways. So if you're new on this channel, this is where we cover watches available for purchase on our website, TeddyBaldassarre.com, as an authorized dealer. So in this video, deep dive on these new Seikos, final considerations at the end, but also throughout the video, if you have further questions or are looking to buy these watches, check out the links in the description down below to the product pages. But without further ado, let's jump into the video, take a closer look at these new Seiko GMTs. So if you've had your finger on the pulse of what has been happening in the industry for the last few years, one point you might likely call out is the rapid progression in the attainable GMT market, where major and smaller brands have begun getting in on the new movement technology available. Strangely, 5 years ago, finding a mechanical GMT under $1,000, let alone $500, was not something that was easy to come across. There are 2 movements though that were responsible for this advancement at this price range. One was Miyota's 9075, which debuted in the Bulova Wilton, and the other was in 2022 when Seiko released a set of new GMTs known as the SSKs, which utilize Seiko's new mechanical GMT movement, the 4R34. Seiko's 4R34 first appeared in 3 models, the SSK 001 with that black-gray configuration, then you had the 003 with its blue and black bezel, and then the 005 with a pop of color of orange. These watches basically overnight changed the complete landscape and have been bestsellers ever since for the brand. Last year, Seiko furthered the collection with the addition of the yellow SSK 017, the Pepsi chapter ring SSK 019, and then the gray and black bezel with golden accents with the SSK 021. Now 2024, Seiko seems to be creating an annual tradition of releasing a trio of watches in this collection, and we have 3 new ones to choose from. You have the SSK 033 with that white silver dial with blue and black bezel, the SSK 035 in green and black with a green dial, and then finally the SSK 036 in a root beer configuration coming on a strap. So the 3 new versions of this SSK GMT retain the same dimensions as the inaugural models, with the 42.5mm diameter, a 13.6mm thickness, and a lug-to-lug of around 46mm. Now, due to the short lugs, the watches are going to wear much smaller than you would think, and this is not a new feature when it comes to Seiko watches in general. I would say these wear closer to a 40.5 to 41mm case on wrist. Case finishing is similar to other Seiko 5 Sports models with circular brushing on the top and polished side cases. The 4 o'clock crown is not going to be of the screw-in variety, but is going to be positioned at that silhouette to mirror that of the SKX of years prior, but still manages 100 meters of water resistance. Shifting to the bezel, it does take a similar approach to other GMT watches and being bidirectional in its rotation. That said, it is going to be friction fit, so you're not going to have this audible or tactile feedback when rotating. But in addition to that, you can be rest assured that this is going to be able to be lined up perfectly with any of those markers on the dial. The bicolor 24-hour bezel inserts are executed in a mineral or hardlex crystal, lending to a look that somewhat resembles vintage Bakelite, with 3 variants on offer, like I mentioned, including that black and blue Batman style, a green and black version, and that black and brown with a gold PVD outer bezel, lending to more of this root beer vibe. Casting across that dial is going to be a set of hardlex glass that is going to allow easy viewing down below, and you also are going to get a Cyclops indicator for that date window at 3 o'clock. The 5-link Jubilee style, I know Seiko is not going to mention this as a Jubilee style, but it certainly comes from that point of influence, is going to be 22mm wide at the lugs. And while nothing out of the ordinary, the solid links are a big step up from the rolled hollowed links used on the SKX models from years past. The links are adjusted using the typical Seiko pin and collar system, which can be cumbersome for first-time users to size. Just be careful to not lose those collars and you'll get the hang of it over time. The clasp is going to be stamped and offers 4 points of micro adjustments in the clasp itself and features dual push buttons and a fold-over clasp to lock. Perfectly functional, but feels the most inferior aspect to the otherwise rather buttoned-up presentation. The padded brown leather strap on the SSK 036 is probably best described as serviceable and will require some break-in before comfort becomes a usable adjective to describe it, with a simple pin buckle on the reverse end for strapping it to the wrist. The big difference here from the originals is going to be what is on the dials here in their presentation, more from the aesthetic point of view. The Polar Batman dial, which I would say maybe Polar is not the best representation of this color because it does have some silver undertones, so it's a silver white dial. The green and black version receives a dark green execution for its dial, and then the root beer is going to have a more black, but with some undertones of brown into the approach. The shape of the indices follows the formula that has been well established with the capsule shapes at 6 and 9, with circular indices marking the rest of the hours. An inner chapter ring marks the minutes with additional 24-hour scale, giving the ability to feasibly track 3 time zones due to the rotating 24-hour bezel. The hands also follow the SKX design language, with the addition here being an arrow pointer for the GMT hand, which is color coordinated to each variant, and the second hand sports a lume counterweight. Speaking of lume, Seiko's legendary LumiBrite is used throughout and sets a high standard for brightness and longevity, outdoing tool watches at multiples of the price. A date window resides at 3, as mentioned, accented by that magnification of the Cyclops on the crystal, with black printing on a white date wheel for all 3 variants. Dial tax is kept pretty minimal, with the Seiko word mark at 12, along with the GMT Inscriptive Automatic at 6. So we have certainly spent a good amount of time talking about the 4R34 movement over the past couple of years, but it did, again, I want to stress this, change the game for the GMT market and opening up the possibility of this complication type for under $500. We've seen other micro brands start to use the movement, but it really started here with these SSK GMTs. In terms of the specs of this movement, it has a beat rate of 3 Hz, 21,600 vibrations per hour, and a somewhat average 41-hour power reserve. In other words, typical Seiko specs, but for the money, you're getting an in-house movement with bulletproof reliability. Of course, the headline here is going to be the ability to track an additional time zone in the form of color GMT movement. So in other words, when you pull out the crown to that second position, rotation in one direction will allow the adjustment of that 24-hour hand, while the other direction at that point will allow the change of the date. At the farthest pulled out point, you will be able to hack the movement or stop the second hand in the process there. And then when pressing the crown all the way back into its resting position near the case, you will then be able to hand wind movement. The 4R series of calibers from Seiko are probably one of the most well-established movements for its price range and have been around for over a decade now, helping set a standard for its price point and being images of reliability and durability over the years. In terms of what Seiko is going to quote out of the factory for accuracy for these, you're looking at plus 45 seconds to minus 35 seconds a day. So not the greatest range of accuracy, pretty wide acceptable range, but you will find, and I have found with these examples as well as the countless other Seiko watches that are powered with 4R calibers, that they are typically going to well outperform this range of accepted spec. So now to unpack, looking at these new Seiko 5 Sports GMTs known as the SSKs. Some of the considerations that I would bring up are basically the reminders that these are Seiko 5s after all. You are getting more towards the expensive end of Seiko 5s. At retail pricing, you're starting right underneath $500. And typically, including on our website, can find these for less than that high list price of just over $500. So keep that in mind. But this is setting the high-end ceiling of what the Seiko 5 collection is going to offer up with that added complication. There are some elements of the Seiko 5s that you'll see here. The bracelets with some of their finishing, not the greatest. Hardlex glass being used on these despite being closer to $500. And you also have the bezel that's going to be friction fit rather than having more of a polished presentation compared to some other GMTs that might be a little bit more. But just because these sit at the higher end of the Seiko 5 collection does not mean that they don't warrant their price and position as being more elevated propositions in that collection. These are watches that just check off the boxes, and regardless of whether you are a new collector or somebody that is seasoned in the game, you can find a lot of reasons to want to wear these watches and have them be a part of your rotation, or in some cases, maybe be your only watch. The new dial options are all tasteful. I would say probably the more popular ones will be that blue and black bezel with white silver dial configuration and the green, but the root beer is also nice, especially with getting a strap option on the table if you wanted to go that route and saving some money in the process. These are gonna be suitable for basically every wrist out there. There are going to be some on the smaller side of things that might be sized out, but for the majority of wrists, I would say these wear very well. 100 meters of water resistance, check off that box. The Seiko SKX and Rolex GMT crossover, it just simply works. You can see the maintained Seiko DNA in here while bringing in a GMT complication. Sometimes it's very effortless in doing this, and this is a time where it is effortless in this case. Reliable caliber on the inside. The 4R, despite not being a great looking movement to look at, that's not why you get these watches. You get these watches for the reliability, durability, and just being a no-nonsense type of approach to the equation of mechanical watches under $500. And speaking of that price range, for a GMT watch under $500, I don't think there's a major brand that competes on the level of Seiko and what they're bringing forth the SSKs. The tasteful design is there, the wearability is there, the spec is there when it comes to water resistance. Yes, there are some shortcomings with the hardlex and what maybe some people might bring up on that front, but you can't knock these watches for not looking the part and being really attractive watches for the money. And now with 3 new colors that I would argue are some of the best of the bunch so far, it makes it that much more difficult than what is the best SSK GMT to choose from. But in my opinion, it's hard to do wrong with this entire collection. They are phenomenal watches for the money. All right, guys, that's all we have for this video. If you did enjoy it, please give this video a thumbs up. Really do appreciate that. But also, if you are in the market for this watch, it is available on TeddyBaldassarre.com. TeddyBaldassarre.com is an authorized dealer for over 30 brands. Every purchase from our website supports the content, but also comes with a full factory warranty, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support. And also, if you have any questions for us, reach out to us on live chat. We have team members around the clock, well, 18 hours a day. If you have questions for us, any watch on our website, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to help. But all right, guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.